All right, what's going on? Once again, it's your boy T coming back at you again. I'm trying to do a little something quick this time. I don't want to be too long winded, even though I know this is going to be a little lengthy. Now, today's topic is racism. What exactly is racism? Now, we hear this phrase a lot, but it's a term that isn't directly defined. What I mean by that, it's a term that is highly opinionated today. A lot of people have what they feel to be racist or what they understand racism to be. So today what I want to do is I want to do a little something objective, a little unbiased. I want to give a unbiased understanding of the word racist or racism and the history behind racism. So for starters, I want to just grab this definition real quick so we could have a foundation of racism. So now what is racism? Racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. So now, what exactly does this mean? Well, it's very self-explanatory. It's a personal action. It's a belief when you see a prejudice, when you prejudge someone, or when you discriminate upon someone based upon their race or ethnic group, and it's typically a minority or someone that's marginalized. Now, a lot of people fall within the spectrum. You have people who are white who are racist. You also have people who are black that are racist, just like you have an Asian racist. You have Indian racist, whatever nationality or whatever ethnicity you choose to proclaim, you can be racist towards another person. So now, my thing is, what is the history of racism? Because we hear a lot of things about history, and we hear that the discrepancies from racism itself molded the future and led to a people being, how can I put this? It led to a people being placed at a disadvantage, so to say. So first, what I want to grab now, this is an insert. This is an article I want to show you guys from Stanford University, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and this is an article that was written based on race. Now, there's a little insert that I want to grab real quick. All right, follow me, guys. The ambiguities and confusion associated with determining the boundaries of racial categories have provoked a widespread scholarly consensus that discrete or essentialist races are socially constructed, not biologically real. Now, let's stop here for a moment. What exactly are they saying? They're saying that race is a social construct and not biologically real. Now, if you've been following my channel, you've seen my previous videos, you will have an understanding of what socially or social, pardon me, what socially or social means, or for something to be a social construct. the word social is a word that means like community or people living together as a whole, companionship. So a social construct will have to be something that people agree upon, an understanding, a philosophy that people agree upon. And scholars are saying that they don't believe that it's biologically real. So now why are they saying they don't believe it's biologically real? Well, according to science, you have what's called well, I'm not gonna use the exact phrase. I'll make videos about this in the future, but you have what's the theory of man out of Africa. And within this theory, basically all men come from a common source. You have where man migrated out of South Africa, eventually made his way to what would be called the Fertile Crescent. While in this area, there was an evolutionary shift in intelligence, and certain people stayed and they developed whatever it was that they developed there. Some people continued to migrate on. Eventually, you had some people in Europe, you had some people in Asia, and whatever have you pertaining to the theory. Now, as I said, I'll make a video later in the future about that, but that's exactly what they're alluding to when they say not biologically real. So now, back to this socially constructed. How can they say that race is a social construct and not biologically real? Because I could literally look at myself and see that I'm physically different from other people of what we would consider other races. But now, what exactly is the history of the concept of race? So now, I want to grab another insert from Wikipedia entitled Historical Origins of Racial Classification. Now, I want to highlight this part right here. The modern concept of race emerged as a product of the colonial enterprises of the European powers from the 16th to 18th century, which identify race in terms of skin color and physical differences. Now I'm going to stop real quick. So now, before this time period, the 16th to the 18th century, race was actually something that was more so about your bloodline. It was more so about the family that you come from. Now, as I mentioned, the scholars, they say it's not biologically real. Why? Because of the theory of man out of Africa. As I said, I'll make videos about that. I'll actually go a little bit into this today, but this is not necessarily the topic of discussion. But as I said, you had, quote unquote, according to the theory, you had Africans that left out of South Africa and migrated. So theoretically, everyone is an African. This is why they say it's not biologically real. And this is a part of why they say that it wasn't until the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries that race actually becomes something that people distinguish when it came down to skin color and physical differences. So now I'm going to continue on reading. This way of classification would have been confusing for people in the ancient world, since they did not categorize each other in such fashion. So again, like I said, race itself was not necessarily a thing about skin color per se. It was more so about the bloodline, the family that you came from. Let's look at the etymology real quick of race. Race from the 1560s. People descending from a common ancestor. Class of persons allied by a common ancestry. So it was a class system of people from a common ancestry. From Middle French, race, earlier raza, breed, lineage, family, possibly from Italian razza, um, influence, tribe, nation. You know, it's insinuating the people that you come from. Now, real quick, even though this says nation here, it doesn't necessarily race doesn't necessarily categorize you as race doesn't necessarily give you a nationality. Nationality is a legal term. So yeah, race isn't necessarily your nationality. Your nationality is based upon where you live legally. Real quick, nationality. Nationality is a legal identification of a person in international law, establishing the person as a subject, a national of a sovereign state. We went into this when we spoke about how our country operates. We are a constitutional federal republic. You know, we have a federal and a state government. This is speaking of governance. It affords the state jurisdiction over the person and affords the person the protection of the state against other states. So again, I'll go deeper into this in another video, but real quick, just to wrap this portion up, you know, so you get an understanding of what race is. So race is, according to as the ancients had seen it, race was your bloodline, the people that you came from. And in an ancient setting, according to biology, almost everybody came out of Africa. So that means most people had to have been dark skinned. So most of the ancient world, seeing how they were dark skinned, they didn't have the concept that we have today as written. This classification would have been confusing for people in the ancient world since they did not categorize each other in such fashion. You had some light-skinned people, dark-skinned people, fair-skinned, and you had some people that was in a lighter. I'll make a video about that, but there's a article that I read not too long ago on the National Library of Medicine website, and it was speaking upon, well, if I'm not mistaken, that's the source, but it was speaking upon how the quote-unquote blonde hair, blue eyes, that was a secluded group of people from a blood type that is traced back to, if I'm not mistaken, Western Europe. I gotta look into that, but like I said, I'll make a video onto that. So now moving forward. Oh, but before I go forward, so now since we are reading that the ancients, they didn't necessarily view race the way we view race today. When did that start? You know, why are they saying that it's a social construct and not biologically real? So now let's look at the early taxonomic models. Now I want to grab another insert real quick. The 1735 classification of Carl Linnaeus. Now you got to look into this guy. He was basically the father of taxonomy and zoological studies. You know, that's what they say. You know, right here. There you go. He is known as the father of modern taxonomy. You know, he was the guy that was leading all of this social thought or this social understanding. So now let's start back. The 1735 classification of Carl Linnaeus, inventor of zoological taxonomy, divided the human species Homo sapiens into continental varieties, of Europeus, Asiaticus, Americanus, and Afar. Afar would be Africans. Each is so well. As a matter of fact, let me just stop there. So now, this guy right here, Carl Linnaeus, he was the one that basically divided up the continental understanding of humans. So when people look at, oh, you are African, you're European, this is the guy that did that. You can look more into who he was on your own time. I'm gonna try to be quick with this. I don't want to be too long-winded because I got a few other things I want to get into. But when you get into this guy, you start to see that he was a person that influenced people like Karl Marx. And if you know anything about Karl Marx, he is the founder of Marxism. So yeah, these are the type of people that we're dealing with right now. So now this is why, for example, when we read that ancient people, they didn't have this concept, is because most of the world, they just looked at race as people that you come from, as in like your lineage. Not until guys like this guy did you start dividing people by land mass. Like, we from this land. He didn't necessarily come up with the topic of race per se, or distinguishing skin color per se, but it was people who learned from him. Again, you have to go through his history and learn about this guy. It's a lot of history with what he did and the people that learned under him and people that were influenced by him and his teachings. Like, for example, Karl Marx. So now, remember, we're talking about people who, in general, just out of nowhere, just started embracing this new ideology. So what was the older world like? What was it like before this, when race was just pardon me, when race was just a family line and there was no social construct that we have today when it comes down to skin color? Because remember, it's not biologically real based upon science. This would be science and this would be opinion, basically. So now when we look at science, remember, the theory is that man came out of Africa. So what did some early Europeans look like? Who were some early Europeans? And how did they classify themselves outside of what Carl Linnaeus did? Now, a lot of people, they think about the ancient times and they know the Romans, the Greeks, you know. So what I want to do is I actually want to grab some of these people real quick. And who I want to start off with is a man named Septimius Severus. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this guy. You could look into him on your own time. But real quick, Septimius Severus was a Roman emperor. A Roman emperor. This guy was an emperor from 193 to 211. He was born in Leptis Magna in the Roman province of Africa. This guy was a African, and he was born an African, meaning he was black, and a Roman emperor. A Roman emperor, you can't get no higher than a Roman emperor in Rome. So now, let's look at this guy. So now some people might say, oh, just because he was born in Africa, that don't necessarily mean that he was black. You got white Africans. But I mean, just look at him. Look at this coin. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Look at this coin. You tell me that's not a black man? Come on, let's scroll down. Come on, you see the coin of this guy? That's not a black man? Come on, man. I hate to be stereotypical, but you see that nose? That's not black people. Like, come on, man. Now, some people look at this, and this is the problem with a lot of Roman artwork, because these statues and things of that nature, they don't do justice. They're not showing us the color of these people. So let's look at some, some artifacts where we do get color, and you see this man, and you know that he is dark skinned from Africa, and he is an emperor. Like I said, you can read more about this man and his dynasty. So now we got Septimius Severus. What about before him? Remember, they saying that it's not biologically real. So we see Septimius Severus, but he's from Africa. Of course, he's gonna be, he's gonna be black. He's from Africa. So what about these people? The Etruscans, or Etruscans, however you prefer to pronounce it. This is their artwork. Look at these people. Who are they? Look at this. Who were the Etruscans? Italy magazine. Who are these people? Let's find out. Who are these people? Oh, come on, what's going on with this? Alright, here we go. I'm gonna just read this real quick. Etruscan, member of an ancient people of Etruria, Italy, whose urban civilization reached its height in the 6th century BCE. 6th century, so that's talking about, they reached their height at that time. So that's talking about a good 700, 600 BC, when these people were thriving, because they reached their height around the 6th century BC. These are the people that that the scholars are referring to when they say that it's not biologically real. Why are they saying it's not biologically real? Because when you look at original Europeans, this man was a European by definition. He lived in Europe. Europe is a nationality. I don't know why this thing moving slow. But Europe, not Europe. European is a nationality. It's a legal identification of person, and international law establishing a person as a subject, a national of a sovereign state, meaning that you belong to this form of government, a sovereign state. So this man here, even though he was from a province of Africa, he was a Roman by nationality, just like the Etruscans. They were in Italy, and they thrived around 6th century BCE. They were Europeans or Romans. These people. So this is before Septimius Severus. So there was dark-skinned people already there. This is why the scholars are telling you this. Okay, so now this was before Septimius Severus. This is before his time when he ruled. So what about after him? Did all the black people just leave Europe? Let's find out. Now right here, I have a little article. I'm sure a lot of people hear about the Moors, especially in America. We hear people have a lot of hype, and they have a lot of hoopla that they speak when it comes to the Moors. It's a lot of people who look at this whole Moorish thing as Oh, you guys are just those woke guys. I'm not talking about those Moors. I'm talking about ancient Moors and early Europe, in the medieval period. Those Moors. Now, so that you can solidify in your mind that this ain't just some BS. This ain't you know, some random conspiracy nut like how other people do. This is the National Archives of the UK. You see the website. This is the National Archives of the UK. This is a government website that I'm giving you right now. And it's telling you the Black Moors in Scotland. Now I'm not gonna go too deep into this. As you can see, it's even going into King James, the man that authorized the translation of the Bible. And again, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but it's also suspected that he is also a dark-skinned man. But that's for a later video. I want to read this first part right here. Africans have been present in Europe from classical times. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries, Roman soldiers of African origin served in Britain, and some stayed after their military service ended. Now I want to stop here. Now, they telling you in the 2nd and 3rd century, Roman soldiers of African origin served in Britain. We just read about this man right here. He was one of them people that they talking about. Look at the time period. Look at that. Look at the time period, the 2nd and 3rd century. He wasn't no Roman soldier serving for Britain. He was the emperor. See, this is how they distort history. I'm gonna make some videos about how they distort history, but this is how they distort history. Alright, pardon me, you guys. I got a little interrupted real quick. Fatherly duties. But yeah, so as I was saying, I'm not sure exactly where I left off, but yeah, if I misspoken about King James, this is not the King James that authored the Bible. Sorry, I'm not authored, but I'm authorized the translation of the Bible. Pardon me for that. It's not the same guy. I misspoken if I did say that. As I said, this is an impromptu. I'm just flying through a couple things. I didn't really prepare for this little lecture, but okay. So the main purpose, as I said, is to show you the Moors who still were around in Europe around 1500s, leading up to the 1600s, and you can actually look more into the King James, because that's actually what I was trying to grab. I was being quick, and I just seen the name King James. I didn't pay attention to the year, but this is a different King James. But you can find information on the King James that authorized the Bible and his connection with Black Moors. But for this time's sake, I'm just gonna stick with this one and move on to the next topic. Now, this man right here, Pedro Alonso Nino. Now, as you can see, the timing for this man compared to the timing of the Moors that was with King James. Now, this man here, Pedro Alonso Nino, was a Spanish explorer known as El Negro. Basically, this is letting you know that he was a Moor. He was straight up a Moor. A native of I'm not gonna mispronounce that. I'm not gonna make a fool of myself right now, but he was a native of Spain. Nino acted as a pilot of the Santa Maria during the first voyage of Christopher Columbus. So now I want to stop here. So now, this Moor, this black navigator, you got to look a little more into this guy. But he was a navigator on the first voyage of Christopher Columbus. Now, a lot of people like to throw out a lot of racist remarks about Christopher Columbus, but guess what? He had a wealthy, powerful, might I add, a wealthy and powerful black navigator with him on his voyages. Like I said, you guys got to look into this guy, Pedro. You got to look into this guy. He was a Moor. He was wealthy. He had power. He wasn't some slave or some indentured servant that was working for Christopher Columbus. Don't get it twisted. And another thing that people do get twisted is when it comes down to slavery in America. But like I said, I wanted to make this about racism, not necessarily about slavery. I'm gonna do a video in the future about slavery, but I want to grab something real quick. Speaking of men like Nino, a book, Black Slave Owners, Free Black Slave Masters in South Carolina, 1790 to the 1860. So now what I want to do is go to page 9. This is a good book. I suggest a lot of people should read this book, but I'm gonna go to page 9 real quick. Let's go to page 9. So now keep in mind, Pedro Alonzo Nino, he would be considered by nationality, pardon me, y'all, by nationality, Pedro and other black Moors in Scotland or in Spain or wherever they reside throughout Europe. By nationality, these people would be Europeans. They would be British. They would be Scottish or whatever else. Think about that for a moment. So now back to this book, Black Slave Owners. Now, before I give a little understanding on this, I just want to say real quick, a lot of people have a misconception about the slavery in this country. Many black people came here as free men, never served any slavery, like Pedro Alonzo Nino. Even though he's quote unquote Spanish, he is a Moor. And if you do history on the Moors, you would know exactly who they were and where they came from and how they came about. So now you have these free black people in the 1700s with wealth in the Americas. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is for a separate video. I don't want to go too much into this, but I just wanted to highlight this real quick. And look at these numbers. I'm going to read this. Percentage of free black slave owners, free black slave owners, and slave holding, head of family, recorded on the federal census with state and local records demonstrating slave ownership in Charleston City, South Carolina. And this is from 1830 to 1860. You see these percentages of slave owners? And if you don't want to believe it, I mean, you can see the source right here. Look this up yourself. This is the source. It sounds unrealistic. Now, what I will admit is that this quote unquote slave holdings or slave holding, this is a taxation. Like I said, read the book. This is about taxation right here. They was claiming this on their taxes. Free black slave owners. And another thing that's another misconception, like I said, I don't want to go too much into slavery, but a lot of time, the reason why this number looked this way is because a lot of time people were indentured servants. Harsh bondage wasn't necessarily, well, like I said, I'm going to go into that. Slavery has a strong history and ancient history. Almost every civilization on earth held slaves, yet few abolished slavery. So as I said, I don't want to make this too much about slavery, but you can look up, this the sources. You can look this up. Black slave owners, the percentages of black slave owners in one city, Charleston, South Carolina. This is just one. Remember, you had guys like Pedro Alonzo Nino. And according to this man, his race was according to his family. He didn't know anything. Like how it says, where's that? Where we at? You see how right here where it say this way classification would have been confusing to people in the ancient world since they did not categorize each other in such fashion? That's speaking about guys like Nino. He ain't know nothing about none of this racism stuff that we talking about because the color of my skin. He was navigating with Christopher Columbus. You telling him that he was systematically oppressed? Nah. Like, come on. People don't realize history. That was what? That was a social construct. That was a social construct. That stuff not biologically real. Where we at? These the original Romans. You can look all this up yourself on your own time. But for now, I'm about to end this. I'm gonna catch you guys later with another installment, as I usually do. I'm gonna start bringing out this truth and informing the people the things that we just didn't know. A lot of this stuff is like right in front of us. Like, who would have thought? Like the original Romans, and we're not talking about they migrated or they went to war with some Africans, and no, these are the people that built Rome. Like, you have a Roman Republic and a Roman Empire. They come from that Roman Republic, and then you had later the Empire. The Empire came later. This is the Roman Republic right here. Like I said, it's a lot that we gotta learn about. Don't forget about this guy, Carl Linnaeus, 1735. You ask me, 1735 with this guy, with zoological taxonomy, that's where we get the birth of racism from. You ask me, the racism as we know it today, because racism itself has not been known that way that we know it in the ancient world. Today, social construct, socially constructed. Right, so I'm gonna wrap this up and catch you guys next time. Alright, y'all. Later.